Now, KwaZulu-Natal has been devastated by severe flooding, with areas like Pinetown, Hillcrest and Kloof experiencing submerged roads, washed away vehicles and widespread power outages. The province is now in the critical recovery phase, with the Disaster Management Centre spearheading clean-up operations and damage assessments. As a level 6 weather warning remains in place, authorities are urging residents to remain vigilant. Head of Disaster Management, Dr Elias Sithole, joins us now. Dr Sithole, always good to speak to you. Now, what is the latest on the mop-up efforts, if you will, to bring some form of civility to the challenges that residents and in parts of KZN are having following all this flooding?
Good day to the viewers as well. Yes, you are correct. KZN, it was definitely severely affected by these heavy rains. They affected the roads, electricity infrastructure, and some of the communities' houses, they were flooded. Yes, the mop-up operations, it is continuing in other areas because there were roads which were closed 2 days ago as a result of the flooding. So the mop-up operations, they are continuing in those areas, but also the disaster teams were making sure that the communities who have been affected, they are taken care of in terms of having been given the relief materials.
Now, Dr Sithole, we describe these operations as mop-up operations, and I suppose the irony is that we haven't even gotten to the rainy season, so there is more rain imminent. Just how prepared are you to deal with the further rainfall? Yeah, look,
when we start the summer season, we always make sure that all our disaster teams and disaster centers, our state of readiness, it is actually at a level which is acceptable. So we were prepared to deal with all these rainfalls across the country. Unfortunately, when you go to KZN, specifically in eThekwini, you have then residents who find themselves in areas which they are not supposed to build houses there. So as a result of that, we conducted awareness campaigns to make sure that when something happens, those communities, they know what to do, but also we know how best we can assist them.
Now, how is infrastructure, I mean, let's talk about roads, let's talk about electricity and public services being affected? And is restoration and progress, particularly where water supply and electricity have been cut off?
Yeah, there are areas where the electricity was affected, and Eskom is working around the clock to make sure that they reinstall those areas which were affected, and then also the infrastructure which were damaged. We're doing assessment to make sure that the infrastructure which is not usable anymore, then we can close those infrastructure. But the ones which they need to be repaired, and then we can easily identify those ones. The ones which are completely destroyed, those are the ones which we need to rebuild them. And there's a process which we go through in terms of the assessment to determine the extent of the damage and the cost of the infrastructure. Then we can make financial available to repair those damaged infrastructures.
When we go back 3 years to those dreaded floods in 2022, there's a trail of destruction almost every single year for the last 3 years. To what extent have you been able, or the authorities been able to bring back the infrastructure to a state of usability? I mean, how much infrastructure has been completely lost versus what you've been able to repair or reconstruct?
Yeah, you are correct. When you go back to the flood which affected eThekwini, April 22 floods, during that time, a lot of infrastructures were damaged, and then it really affected some of the services in the city. But then the next year, again, they experienced the heavy rains, and some of the infrastructures, they were affected. So where I'm going, I'm trying to explain that sometimes we are dealing with the old infrastructure, but when we are rebuilding the infrastructure, we make sure that we build back better infrastructure so that when we are experiencing any heavy rains moving forward, those infrastructure which we have repaired or rebuilt, they're not washed away or being affected. But of course, the old infrastructure we're expecting to be affected as we move forward, but we will deal with the situation as and when we deal with it. Yes, in terms of the cost, it has really costed us billions of rands in terms of repairing that infrastructure.
Now, has Treasury been able to supply the necessary financial resource for you to be able to put the structure back in place?
Yeah, there's a lot of money which we have injected specifically in the city of eThekwini, coming from national. So Treasury, they allocate the money through the National Disaster Management Center in terms of the grants. Then when we received the request from the municipality, then we're able to allocate that money. So we're able to assist them. Of course, also we encourage them to reprioritize their own budget as well. But we have actually supported them and we'll continue providing the support to eThekwini Metro. There is allocations which we are transferring now as we speak to City of eThekwini to make sure that they repair the damaged infrastructure.
Dr. Sithole, when we take disaster management down to the municipalities, what structures do they have in place to deal with impending problems or problems that have occurred? And the reason I ask is because very often we understand that basic flooding on some streets is really because there's garbage in the drainage system that hasn't been cleared, which is then leading to localized flooding.
Yeah, we always say that disaster management is everybody's business, which means the communities themselves, they must also take responsibility in terms of making sure that they avoid crossing the flooded rivers, low-lying bridges, but also making sure that the communities, they work with the municipalities in terms of participating in awareness campaigns. So in terms of the structures, we do have disaster-related structures which are at the community level, but also at the municipality level. We always say that municipality, according to the legislation, they must have a disaster management center, and that disaster center is able to take calls, is able to dispatch in assistance to the communities. So those are structures closer to the communities. But also at the provincial level, we do have other structures. In that structure, it allows other provincial departments to come in and provide assistance to that affected municipalities.
Dr. Sithole, always good to speak to you, Head of Disaster Management, walking us through the work that's been carried out, particularly in KZN, as a result of recent flooding. Appreciate your time. Thank you for